Hi, honey. My name is Brandon Kyle Goodman, and you're about to watch another episode of Black Folks. Now, I have some exciting news, which is that over the last few weeks, we've been turning Black Folks into a podcast, okay? Which you can now subscribe to anywhere you get your podcasts. Now, remember, it's Black Folks spelled Folx. For those of you who don't know, Black Folks is where I have one on one conversations with Black people of various identities about our lives and how being Black has shaped our experiences. This week, I had the honor of talking to star of the hit Freeform show, Bold Type, Miss Aisha Dee. Okay? We discussed defining Black love outside of romantic relationships, how Beyonce's Lemonade changed her and everyone's life, and how Aisha's love of Josephine Baker shaped her Black identity. You can watch that conversation on my IGTV or YouTube at Brandon K. Good, on Tom Ellis's IGTV at Official Tom Ellis, or you can listen to it by subscribing to the Black Folks Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Remember, Folx. Also, shout out to my editor, Andrea Allen, and project manager, Lionel Renault, who literally make this video thing possible, okay? Without any further ado, here's my conversation with Aisha Dee. So, hello, Aisha.
Hi.
We're acting like we haven't been talking for the last 7 minutes. So as always with my guest, Aisha, I'm going to have you introduce yourself first, and you can start with your pronouns and tell us anything you want us to know about you and what you do and how fabulous you are, all of it.
Sure. My name is Aisha Dee. It's Aisha like rosacea, in case anyone's wondering about the pronunciation.
I love it.
My pronouns are she, her, they, kind of whatever. And I guess I'm an actress, but I always kind of say that with a high inflection on the end because I kind of can't believe I don't have a real job, you know?
It's a real job.
Let's be real.
How dare you? It is a real job. It's hard.
It is hard. Thank you for seeing me.
It's like if your job isn't real, then what the fuck is my job? Our jobs are real. But I understand
sure.
There are other jobs that require a lot more effort than ours, I guess.
Yeah.
If we're being
honest. I love it. I don't know how to do anything else, so please don't someone make me do anything else.
Don't worry. You're in it. You're in your pocket. That's what we're doing. Okay? All right. And so I will also say how we know each other, which is through Megan. I met you through Megan and Tom, and this is the reason we're all doing this, Black Folks. So that's a very short how we know each other. Sometimes they're long.
Well, ours is simple and sweet.
In these times, the simplicity is what I value most. Yes.
Simplicity.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the big Black Folks question of the day. And I do like to warn, I feel like I have to warn, it's always a big loaded question. And then we'll just taper it in like a cute little glass of wine. Do wine taper it? Yeah, right? Wine tapers.
A wine glass?
Like a wine glass taper.
Or a waist trainer?
A waist. Yes, let's think of this as a waist trainer.
I don't know.
So my question for you today is, beyond romantic relationships, what does Black love mean to you?
Well, I mean, the first thing I think of when I think of Black love is loving one's Blackness. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's used as a weapon and it's used against us our entire lives, you know, and it's pointed out constantly by strangers.
Yes.
I think when I think about that, I think about kind of turning the love inwards and saying like, oh, I love the thing that makes me different, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you turned the love inwards?
Ooh, I feel like there's been several moments throughout my life where I kind of was able to change the narrative and flip it, you know?
Yeah. What was the first moment?
Well, the first one was actually, I used to get kind of bullied as a kid, and my mom is an opera singer, so we spent a lot of time in the library, and she would be printing off sheet music for literally hours, and so I would go into the magazine section, and I would look at the magazines, and they had some international magazines. They actually had Essence magazine at this library, which I loved seeing faces and bodies that looked like mine.
Yeah.
So that was like a really big turning point. I also would spend a lot of time in like the video section. I I remember watching like some old Josephine Baker movies as a kid.
Yes.
And that really, like, even though I know some of them now are probably a little problematic and they kind of play into some stereotypes, but regardless, I was looking at someone who looked like me, and it made me love myself because I saw
Yeah.
her centered in this like beautiful thing, you know.
Wait, how old were you then?
I was probably like 5,
5.
maybe. Yeah.
And then you said there were several points. So like 5-year-old you experiences Josephine Baker and goes, there I am, and like I'm wonderful. And then what happens that like there needs to be a second reckoning? Like
Well,
was there, go ahead.
I think for a lot of young girls, and I don't know the exact statistics on this, but I've read a lot about it. I have a 12-year-old sister, so it's like important to me to know about this stuff. But
Yes.
around the age of 11 or 12, many like young girls kind of go through this. There's this switch that happens where a lot of young girls, I think their self-esteem and confidence kind of takes a dive for some reason. And so I think a lot of that kind of had to do with just, just growing up and normal kid stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And then also kind of just trying to, like, understand, for me, I'm biracial, but I'm also, and I don't know if this is a thing, but like bicultural.
Tell me more about that. What does that mean specifically?
Well, I grew up in Australia.
Okay.
I spent many of my kind of formative years in Australia. And then I moved here, and I'm actually a dual citizen. So I spent many of my formative years here. I came here at 16. So I was still really growing. And
Sure.
I think in my teenage years, I just got really confused. Like, where do I fit, in terms of like, where is the line between white and black and which side of it do I belong on? Obviously, I don't pass. So I was always black in every space, and every breath I've ever taken has been in a black body. But there was also like this kind of, I think, insecurity that was something that I kind of conjured up myself a little bit, I think.
Do you think that there was anything outside of yourself that was supporting? Like, was there evidence outside of yourself that supported that confusion? And I mean, like, how were Black people treating you?
I mean, here's the thing is I remember the first time I was called the N-word, and I didn't know what it meant. And I didn't really have anyone to ask because I grew up in Australia with my white family.
So I'm sorry, the first time you got called the N-word was in America?
In Australia.
In Australia, okay.
Really, really young. But I don't think the kid who called me that word really knew what it meant either. I think it was more just something they had heard.
Yeah.
So I knew, oh, this has something to do with my Blackness. And no one ever believed my mom was my mom and all of that kind of stuff. And then it flipped when I got to America. I was so excited to come here because I felt so isolated there.
Yeah.
And then it flipped, and instead of being called the N-word, I was called an Oreo. And the W word, and yes, I know it's a very like common kind of experience. So I think like just the confusion of having those two different experiences and being like, well, what is the truth? And I think the truth is neither of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof, you've given me so much that I want to respond to. I'll start by saying, my definition of Black love, I think, is the same as yours. I think for so often, which is why I specify like outside of romantic relationships, because I think my understanding of Black love was always a romantic, cis, hetero kind of Black man, Black woman relationship, and that is Black love, and that image is so important for Black love. And in my adulthood, I've understood that it's about loving oneself. It's about the fact that you grow up in this world where your Blackness, as you said, isn't valued, and you're kind of taught that it's this bad thing, and that, and you're kind of swimming in all of. As a kid, I always think about this. As a kid, it's really hard, no matter how much your mom or your dad or whoever's in your life might tell you you're beautiful, you're handsome, you're whatever. It doesn't compete with what you're seeing on TV or what you're not seeing on TV, right? It doesn't compete.
Absolutely.
you know, you see, I used to love Essence magazine, which I know was like such a female-centered thing, but I loved Essence, I loved Ebony, I loved Jet, because it was like the one time. There's also this like, I forget what it was called, but it was like all about black hair. Like there was like literally like black hairstyles, because it was like, oh, like I understand this. This is like, my friends don't get this, but like I understand this and I see myself in this. And so as a kid, to like not know that you are being trained to not love yourself, and then that consciousness that hopefully happens in your adulthood, where you're like, oh, I'm fine. Like I'm good. The way it's everybody else that's the problem. And so I agree with you that is Black love. Like loving yourself, I think is Black love at its purest.
Yeah. And knowing that there's no right or wrong way to be Black.
Or
how
many minutes are we in? Is it Sunday?
Every day is Sunday in the quarantine.
Absolutely. At this point, absolutely. No, you're right. There is no right or wrong way to be Black, which I also think is such a hurdle. And I wonder, I mean, you started to talk about this just as being biracial, that experience of like, you know, you wondering what your Blackness is, but also other people, you know, calling you an Oreo, which I've also heard, and I'm not biracial, but it's at the core of it, it's you're not performing Black correctly, right? At the core, that's what somebody is telling you, like, oh, you're an Oreo because you are not performing Blackness however we think Blackness should be performed. How do you overcome that? Or when did you like, you know, you started by saying that there were several times in your life where you had this like, I love myself. When was like the final time? When were you like, here I am, I've arrived?
Well, I think the most recent one was when Lemonade came out. Oh, and then Black is King also, like,
yes,
a moment of silence.
Yes.
But
yes.
when Lemonade came out, I was actually it was maybe a couple of months earlier. I had surgery on I had some like lady part complicated stuff, and so I had to have this surgery that was an exploratory thing. So it was like, not to get gore, I don't know how like squeamish you are, but it was like it was like abdominal wall surgery. So they basically cut into your entire abdominal wall and take out all of your organs and put them all back in again.
Yeah.
And so I didn't walk. I didn't walk for like maybe a month. I couldn't walk. And so I was like just fucking stuck in bed. And then I went through a breakup. And then I think I was really upset one Sunday, and I was like, well, I guess I'll watch the Beyonce documentary tonight, because no one knew what it was.
Yeah.
And I thought like, oh, this is going to be like Life is But a Dream, and it'll be great. I'll love it. But it's not, you know, it's just going to be fine. Yeah. And I sat on my couch with, I think I had some like Thai food or something, like about to take the first bite, as I see Beyonce sitting there in a turban. She says, you can taste the dishonesty, it's all over your breath. And I literally put it down, stood up, and just cried. I'll like never forget that moment, you know?
I want you to know that as you were talking, my jealousy raged that your expectations were so low that it got to like like, I'm like, wow, that first moment of like, this will be good. And then you're like, oh,
because I was off social media. I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I wasn't taking any like culture in. So it came out of nowhere. And I don't know, just a very like special moment. And also in Lemonade, you got to see so many different types of Black women.
Yes. Which is so important and so beautiful. So then you watch Lemonade, and then how does that, I guess I'm wondering, like, how does that shift how you move through the world? What's the immediate kind of evidence of like, oh, I did this differently, or I felt this different, or I started doing this differently because I had arrived.
Well, I think music has such a powerful influence over me, and I think everyone, but music has always been a very big part of my life. My parents are musicians. So when I listen to an album, like I feel like I ingest it almost, like it's
Yes,
food,
I'm right
you
with
know?
you. Yes.
PJ Morton actually released an album at midnight last night that you should listen to. It's a
Also,
gospel album and it is so good.
I will get on that. Did you hear that Jasmine Sullivan just dropped a song from her EP? Look at your face. You didn't know. Okay. I know. We'll hurry this interview up so that you can go.
I have to go. For 3 minutes, I have to go.
It's the best 3 minutes. I've been listening to it on repeat. I need the whole fucking album. But anyways, okay. Sorry.
Jasmine Sullivan.
Wow.
The song Mascara really like gets me up in the morning, you know.
Let it burn.
What were we talking? Let it burn. Mona Lisa.
Jasmine Sullivan.
I could go on.
We can go on. Okay, we were talking about the evidence that, like, after you watch Lemonade, the evidence of like, oh, you know, how did that start to impact your life? How did you see shifts in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think like there was a big part of it was actually kind of seeing different Black women in their bodies, you know. I remember the scene in the plantation home, and there's just, you can see all of these women and they're different shapes and they're different colors, and I was like, oh, my thighs that I've hated my entire life are fine.
Yes.
My hair is great. And I think I also started like seeing a hairdresser. I used to just cut my own hair, and I was like, I'm gonna go to a hairdresser. And this hairdresser changed how I felt about my hair. I just feel like it was a really important time. And I think it also kind of gave me the confidence to say I wanted something different for my career as well. I started kind of choosing the projects that I wanted to go out for and saying, this project feels important and it feels like something I want to do, so I want to do that. I wasn't just taking a job because I was afraid to never work again.
Yeah.
You know?
It sounds like I could actually cry right now, which is so funny because we were just laughing. But
it's an emotional time.
It's an emotional time.
Yeah.
We're all on edge. But it sounds like you just started taking care of yourself and understood your value. Which is why, you know, like we're in this business, and I always think that we can't underestimate the value of media. Like as dark and nasty as media and Hollywood can be, the immense value that it has on people's lives and just what it means to be able to see yourself and to see a version of yourself. And like, you know, with Lemonade or even Black is King, which I've watched Black is King 15,000, like I am responsible for the majority of her streams. Because it's like,
you're welcome, Beyonce.
You're welcome. It's successful because of me. But anyways, it's like seeing us lit well, you know, seeing us dressed well, seeing just like 20 of us on screen together. Like it just, I'm like, oh, this is what white people have been getting their entire life. You know, like this is what they've been experiencing since they got here. And those of us who are not white have not experienced that. I mean, even like, I think I brought this up before, like watching Crazy Rich Asians was a fucking emotional experience for me, because I was like, I have never seen this many Asian people on screen at one time and looking gorgeous. And I'm not talking about like, you know, fucking superficial beauty standards. I'm talking about just like treated well, like, you know, like independent, able to like have their flaws and have their successes and not need white people to validate them. And I think that's what Lemonade and Black is King and all these, Black Panther and Girls Trip and all these things that have recently started to pop off do for us on such a visceral level. It's like it's beyond the conversation of we need representation, which sometimes feels like it becomes political, and it is political, but do you know what I mean? Like it's like there's
it's tired.
There's something much more than a hashtag, right? It's like it's beyond a hashtag. It's like no, it is important that little Aisha sees herself right? It's important that
Mm-hmm.
little Brandon sees themselves and like goes,
Yeah.
there I am, and I can be
I'm
what.
actually curious. I'm curious what media, like what music, what movies, what TV shows do you feel like were pivotal for you?
Ooh. So Cinderella Brandy was, I could cry. That was a game changer for me. That was I mean, because, you know, you think about fairy tales and you think about, you know, that we just don't exist in fairy tales. People of color don't exist in those stories, period.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Black people, especially Black women. I mean, fairy tales are so female driven and there's never a Black woman in it. And my mother used to, I believe the author's name is Fred Crump, and Fred used to create these fairy tales with Black protagonists. So it was Rapunzel, but it's all Black. Or instead of Jack and the Beanstalk, I think it's Jamako and the Beanstalk.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and my favorite, which is in my bedroom right now, is the Ebony Duckling. So instead of the ugly duckling, it's about this ebony duckling who's this black duck who turns out to be this gorgeous ebony swan. So like my mother like instilled that, but it was very much inside of our four walls.
Mm.
So when Cinderella happened, which was like on the TV and like
Yeah.
everybody was watching, I fucking lost my goddamn mind. Like it was just like, again, like seeing us lit well, seeing us as the protagonist, seeing us be able to sing, seeing us in value made me feel of value. So that was pivotal. What else was pivotal? Uh, I mean, obviously Lemonade was also kind of another level for me too.
Mm.
And what I think is interesting about what you said was knowing what to ask for in your career. And I think that Lemonade also did that for me,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, actually, Life is But a Dream did that for me. She says, and she says, what did she say in it? I don't like to gamble, but if there's one thing I'm willing to bet on, it's myself.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that and I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck. And I think I was in my early, like 2021 when I heard that. And I was like, fuck.
I mean, that documentary is slept on, but it is a Sunday service, if we're honest.
If we're honest, if you really like go through it, like, you can't.
I think it's about time everyone knew.
Go back to HBO, look up Life is But a Dream, Beyonce's documentary. But yeah, that was that was a pivotal moment. Sister Act 2 was also very pivotal for me.
Yeah.
That movie, I mean, I used to watch that movie on repeat, just as like, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention.
I actually watched it a few weeks ago.
Of course, me too.
I realized, I was like, oh my God, I know every single line of this movie.
If you wanted to do a performance right now, you and me, I'll do from beginning to end. If you want to do it right now.
I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him.
Yes, we can do it right now.
Oh, I know that entire montage. It was crazy.
Oh my God.
I was concerned for myself. I was like, oh, you better stop because this is too much for you.
All I want is a reboot so I can play Cheryl Lee Ralph, and I just want to say, singing does not put food on the table.
Oh.
Singing does not pay the bills.
Wait. I'm just gonna pitch it. I say we do another Instagram TV series that is just us reenacting the entire Sister Act 2. We can do the whole series.
I'm in. We'll do them in 10-minute increments. We'll just do 10 minutes. Yes, absolutely. It's a whole series. Wait, what was, because your parents were musicians, what music or what artist for you helped you be like, oh, there I am, I love me because of this?
Well, I mean,
besides Beyonce, yes.
Because she's been around, and like, I think that was, she was so mainstream that it was hard to ignore her.
Yes.
Oh man, MC Lyte.
Oh!
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
MC Lyte is a really big favorite of mine. Also Lil' Kim. Like my mom,
yes.
My family's pretty religious and conservative, you know, and I wasn't allowed to listen to secular music.
Yeah.
Except for if it was Black. Like
Amazing.
my mom was like, you need to be exposed to things that make you love yourself. And honestly, like, props to my mom. She did a great job. She really tried her best to like
Yeah.
expose me to as much of the culture as she could. But I was allowed to listen to like there was a compilation CD called Shake Your Ass that I was allowed to listen to, and I wasn't allowed to listen to like Backstreet Boys. My mom was like, not that. Never that. So I still like, I don't know the Backstreet Boys or Hanson or nothing like that.
I feel like your mother was like, no to NSYNC, but Juvenile, yes, absolutely. That's great.
Yeah, like listening to like Lil Kim's album with no problem.
I'm gonna be the complete opposite. I mean, I love Lil Kim, but for me, it was India Ari's first album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Video. No, I consider all of her albums like one album, so I may pull songs from everything. But Video was obviously, and Brown Skin.
Yeah.
Brown Skin. You know how I love your brown skin. That was in high school. I went to high school in Rome, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so it was a very, 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 very white school.
Okay, so we have that in common.
Just very white, yes. Like I used to, when people would ask, I would pour salt on a table, a lot of salt, and then put a spot of pepper to be like, this is what the demographic of the school is. It's like, you can barely find us.
Yeah.
So it was a hard time because I was also wrestling with my sexuality unconsciously. That wasn't at the forefront, but it was there. Obviously, puberty and all those things. So hormones are raging. But then finding myself suddenly in this very white school as like not the only, but one of very few Black people in the space, and around students who outwardly are not here for anything Black. Do you like it's not? I was in the fucking country. Like they were not trying to be like, I'm sure some of those people right now are like all lives matter people is what I'm trying to express.
Oh yeah.
But like they, not all of them, but many of them I'm sure are. And so just to like hear Brown Skin by India Ari and like literally kind of lock myself in my room and like listen to India Ari on loop, or listen to Kelly Rowland had dropped her solo album at that time, listening to that on loop, just kind of trying to get lost in the music which I couldn't articulate at the time, but obviously now I'm like, oh, that was because I didn't feel of value.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that you kind of come to as an adult and you don't even realize at the time that you're escaping.
Yes.
You know?
1000% escaping.
Yeah. I mean, I had like big over headphones like these, and I had my little Discman and the zipper, the zip thing. Oh, actually it was
with all your CDs in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But that came it came much later. We were doing like records and tapes for a long time because we bought everything at the thrift shop.
Yes.
I was always so jealous. I was like, what do you mean you could just skip to the next track? That's crazy. Is this stuff of the future? It's insane.
What do you mean you can just skip to the next track? Yes,
it was
very true.
Unheard of.
Yes.
But there's an escape that comes with like just putting headphones, and I still do it even now.
Yeah,
especially now. I turn the music up way, way, way to the top, and it just like takes me away. You know?
Every night I put on Anita
movies.
Baker. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Every night I put on Anita Baker for a little escapism.
Oh.
It's like there's something about the timbre of her voice that feels like a better time. And I think by a better time, what I mean is, as a kid, you're just naive to it all. So it's a better time. And I don't think it was a better time for Black people, but I think it was just a better time as a child, not aware of all of this. So there's something very comforting about that. What was your mom's favorite song? What did your mom play in the house?
My mom loved Mahalia Jackson.
Oof.
She loved her. So we listened to a lot of Mahalia Jackson and a lot of jazz music as well. Like I grew up on jazz music. My father's a jazz musician.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, like drummer. So they're both bougie and like
very, very particular about the.
I am like they like 5 musics out of all of the musics.
There are 5.
They're like this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Everything else is trash.
Like, okay, got it.
Like my mom is so judgmental of of music now. She's like, I don't like that. It's not good. I don't like the tone of her voice or whatever she has to say about it. But yeah, they're very fussy. But Sarah Vaughan was also a big one.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yes. My mother loved Olita Adams. There's this song by Olita Adams called Get Here, and my mother would play it on repeat. I'm pretty sure it's the only song that she played. My mom wasn't like, it wasn't musical. So like, I don't know. I actually don't know how I fell in love with music so much, but I think I fell in love with music because it was the easiest and quickest way to find myself and find like Black people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah, because you seek it as well, because you're not around it.
Yes,
right?
yes. And it's such a space that we thrive in. Like Black people just thrive in music. Fucking created a whole new genre. Well, we create every fucking genre is fucking.
Yeah.
But like, hip hop, jazz, country, like it's all.
Also punk.
I did not know that. No.
Have you seen that there's this documentary called A Band Called Death? I think that's what it's called. I could have it wrong, but it's about these brothers.
Judith confirms.
Yes.
It is a band called Death.
Yes. Yeah, it's so good. And it's about these brothers that basically made the first punk album in their bedroom.
Whoa.
And you can hear their neighbors telling them to shut the fuck up.
That's amazing.
It's so good. It's a great documentary. Really interesting.
What other documentaries have you watched? I would imagine like watching that and being like, oh, Black people created this is very... Two things. For me, I feel like it's bittersweet. I just watched this documentary. Judith, tell me if it's correct. It's called The Remix, and it's about hip hop and fashion. It's on Netflix right now. And I kid you not, in the first 3 minutes, I was weeping because it's basically about how all of the styles, all of the fashion, all of the everything from Chanel to Gucci to whatever is all us. Like it all came from specifically, Judith, will you find the names? It's Dapper Dan and Misa Hilton, I think is who it is. We'll have Judith confirm. But it's like, you're like, oh, it all just came from our culture. This thing that is mainstream and that is everywhere that you see people vying for belongs to our lineage. And yet, because we don't know that, we don't value, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, oh, now I have another sense of value of myself because I'm like, oh, it's just weird to not know that stuff. To not be able
to own it and claim it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And to not be able to claim like what your ancestors have done, what the people who've come before you have done, because you don't know about it, you're not taught about it. I remember even Hidden Figures with Taraji P. Henson and Octavia Spencer. When that came out, I was like, wait, what? This is based on a true story? Because I was like, but I wouldn't have even known to look that up. Does that make sense? That's what I actually took away from that movie, was like, I didn't even know or consider that I should look up if Black women were involved in NASA.
Which of course they were, right?
Which of course they were. And then you're like, you look it up and you're like, oh yeah, that makes 1000% sense. But the way that we're conditioned, especially inside of education, you're like, oh, I wouldn't have even thought to look that up or to consider that we might be inside of that thing that everyone is like, oh my God, that's incredible. I would have never even thought to wonder, like, are we involved in that? Because it's already so considered white. It's already like...
Well, white supremacy finds its way into the minds of all people. And I think that's, we're talking about like, oh, white people need to do the work I think I need to do the work. I need to do the work because I've absorbed so much of it myself too. And it's different work, but it's work nonetheless that we can do to further our own, liberation in the world, And
what do you think your work is?
Oh, I think my work is to be the thing that I was always searching for as a kid, because as a kid, it meant so much to me to see people that looked like me. And unfortunately, when you see yourself the same way multiple times, you start to believe, oh, I am that. And so when we're talking about representation, I think it reduces it too much to just reduce it to one word. Because it isn't just representation. We're talking about a lot about performative activism, right?
Yeah.
Performative activism, I think, is a lot like performative representation,
Mm.
in which you're just kind of putting someone at the front just to say that they're at the front. And like, you're not really telling, when you tell a story about a community, it's important to speak directly to that community so that it's for that community, whatever that community is. And so I don't know, I think like, it's hard for me to kind of center myself in this conversation and this movement that feels so much bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
But I am kind of getting to the point where I think that there's a lot of power in being specific about your experience and kind of using that to connect with people and to create a community,
Yeah, so I put out these, besides these conversations, I put out these videos that are sometimes about my experience, and I always feel like, is that okay? Is that weird? But then it always boils down to, if I am able to articulate something else that somebody else has felt, then that is way more value than me not doing that. Like the specificity allows people to connect. Because I think about when other people have been, even right now, when you've been specific about your experiences, it's like, oh, yes, that's what I'm experiencing, or that's what, so I think it is important. But I think that's also unlearning and retraining, because we've been taught that our experiences don't matter and aren't of value. And so it's hard for us to center ourselves. And so that is part of the work, is like learning that it is okay for us to center ourselves, because we know what the intention is, right? The intention isn't to like, I want likes and performance. It's like, no, like I'm trying to figure this out and put words to this thing to help other people also put words to this thing, so that hopefully we can heal from this thing that we've been dealing with since we landed.
Absolutely.
I had a friend tell me, white friend, who is wonderful and doing the work, and she said something about like, I was saying that like I was afraid of taking a seat at the table, and something to that vein. And she was like, it's so funny, as a white person, I'm never afraid of taking a seat at the table. In fact, I will take a seat at tables that I have no business being at, just as a white person. Like that is her conditioning. Obviously she's the therapist, and so she's like, I don't do that, but that is the conditioning of a white person, is like, that seat is mine. Oh, and I'm not even qualified to be at this table, but I'm gonna sit here. And for us as Black people, who are sometimes overqualified, we still have this, but I don't know if I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's making yourself smaller so you can fit, I want to fit into whatever box you gave me, the box that I'm allowed to fit in because I am a person of color, It's funny, I was like thinking this morning about, this conversation we were going to have, and I was just, because I can't handle silence. It's really bad. I have to have like a podcast or music or an audiobook or something playing.
Yeah.
It just helps me. I've been like that my whole life. But I was listening to this Alan Watts speech. It's like a book on tape. It's this kind of a lecture from like the 60s, I think, or maybe the early 70s. And it's so interesting because he was talking about how the world is really wriggly. It's a wiggly world.
Yeah.
And he said, the trees are wiggly, and the ocean's wiggly, and the fish in the ocean are wiggly, and the clouds are wiggly. And we are in these boxes. You're in this square box, and I'm in this square box, and we've been told to like live in these houses, and we've been told to fit ourselves into these boxes that can't contain us because humans are the wriggliest things of all.
Yeah.
And like, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not Alan Watts, so I'm not that, but it kind of struck me in this really interesting way, because I realized there's there's so much pressure put on us all the time to fit and to make ourselves small, so that we can fit into a space that someone else has designed for us, but it can't contain us because we contain multitudes, you know?
Oh, I know. I'm just letting the sermon wash over me because I'm just absorbing. Because no, I mean you said it so brilliantly. It's we're not supposed to the box that's been designed for us. I mean, I think that's what we are constantly fighting against. You know, when you finally realize, and that is the work to go back to like what is our work as Black people inside of this. It's like. One, recognizing that there's been a box that has been designed for us that we have no business occupying.
No. And I think that's where the innovation of Black people comes from too. It's out of necessity.
Yes.
Because I don't fit here. Yes. I have to create something totally new.
Yes. And I should. Also, you said, to be the thing I was always searching for.
Yeah.
That work. That I think that for Black people in this moment, you know, white people have a lot of work to do. But for us, it is so emotional. I mean, there is obviously so much political action that we have to do, and we're in the streets protesting, and we want to create policy. But there is, you know, it's funny that mental health hasn't often been valued inside of the Black community, because I think it's the most important thing for us but then also I'm like, well, that also kind of makes sense, because to really unpack that shit would stop you dead in your tracks. Like if you were to really understand the box that's been designed for you, that you've been forced to live in, and the ways in which your freedoms have been stripped from you, even though we are free, what that does to your psyche. And would you be able to move through your day? Would you be able to raise your kids with that information? Like I'm having trouble as somebody with no kids having that much awareness, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I got just a dog and a husband. I'm like, you know, there are days where I'm like, to show up for my children inside of this, I get why mental health hasn't been the center, but that is our work right now, to be.
Well, it's been passed down.
Yeah. And we have to break that cycle so that we can be the thing that we've been searching for, that yearning, that yearning and that emptiness, or that feeling of unfairness, or whatever that stuff is. All that stuff is, I think, a search that we've all been doing unconsciously. And I think the work is to now do it consciously.
Yeah. And also, like, I mean, I'm sure you have these people too, but you look to the people who came before you, you know, for inspiration and for just to know, like, this is where I start, you know, because we're all kind of standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us, you know.
Yes.
And like, for me, I mean, I was just like glancing over, I have this like picture of Josephine Baker there.
I have James Baldwin.
And then there's like Solange, there's like Beyonce's over there.
Yes.
I have like Beyonce babushka dolls. There's like the evolution of Beyonce.
Love it.
But I was like just thinking about all of these people that I have in my home, and like, I mean, it's the image of them.
Yeah.
But it feels important to kind of acknowledge the work that they did.
Yes.
To push the needle just a little bit. And I think that that's what I feel my purpose is. I feel like my purpose is to take that same thing and to push it even further. And then the people that come after me will push it again, you know? And especially someone like Josephine Baker is like so important to me. If you want to go research someone, research Josephine Baker, because I've been known to, you know, back when people had like house parties and stuff.
Back in the day.
Yeah. There had been a few times where like at the end of the night, I'll be like, was I okay? Did I drink too much? And people will be like, no, you just went around to every group at the party and told them Josephine Baker's story. Like, I'll like interrupt a conversation and be like, you know about Josephine Baker?
I love that.
It took all my self-control not to make this entire hour.
You gotta educate people. They gotta research. No,
that's also my job. It's my calling.
But I think you called her because, or you're called to her because of the rebel that she was. You know, because of it feels as though she fought to get outside of that box.
Oh yeah.
And was successful. Right?
Well, there had never been a Black woman as a sex symbol, or a Black woman at the forefront of pop culture, period.
Yeah.
You know, she kind of created this idea of celebrity as we know it. Mm-hmm. You know, I think like before her, who was there that was really like performing celebrity? Like Beyonce.
Right.
Beyonce. I meant Josephine.
I mean, come on, there's a, talk about your shoulders, talk about whose shoulders you stand on, for sure. I also wonder about, just thinking about Josephine Baker and thinking about getting outside of a box and like, you know, what it means, because I think that this is what's happening right now in 2020, which is that I think our generation is being charged to create a change that we haven't seen, like to create things that haven't existed and to use tools that haven't existed before, that we have to create the tools and create the images and create the lanes that haven't existed. And that's such an interesting and difficult and emotional and challenging feat, right? Because there's one thing to go off a script and make the script better. There's another thing to be like, no, we're starting from scratch. And it feels like that's what we are being asked to do in 2020, is to do what Black people do, which is innovate, you know, and be resilient, but to create something. I remember I had somebody when I was not first starting out, but when I was like, I met like a crossroads in my career, maybe at age like 22 or something. And I was about going back to school for journalism. And my roommate at the time, beautiful Puerto Rican woman, was like, I don't, journalism is dying. One. So print at the time was like, you know, like,
wow. Yeah.
She was like, don't go to school for that. But more importantly, she's like, it's probably that you want to create your own lane. She's like, the thing that you're trying to do doesn't exist. And so it's not really about going back to school so much as it is about creating that thing that just doesn't exist. And that's challenging. That's that box. That's that like getting outside of your box of like, I have to go here and do this and study this and get this degree. And more so being like, how do I create something that fits the multitudes, to use your word, the multitudes of the person and the being that I am.
But it's also really scary too.
Terrifying.
You know, I feel scared all the time.
Terrified.
Just so much like fear, but then also I think you have two choices. You know, when you're feeling fear, you're at a crossroads and you can choose, you know, you can choose the negative one or you can choose the positive one. And sometimes it's hard to know which is which, but yeah, I mean, to your point, I think we're at this moment right now that feels like we're on the precipice of something that's entirely new, something we've never seen before.
Yes.
But it's not the first time we've been at the precipice of something we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, that gives me some comfort, just knowing that there are people who came before, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's time for my last question. And I have so many last questions, but about like, what's the, I guess maybe the most important question would be, we are on the precipice of this, whatever this is, and it is scary. So how do you manage the fear so that it doesn't stop you from pushing the needle?
You know, this is probably going to sound kind of basic.
No.
But I'm pretty basic, so I guess it works. I think weirdly, it's something that I've realized, especially, you know, just being in quarantine and being so isolated, is how important it is to make sure I'm eating good, make sure I'm drinking my water, doing my yoga, meditating, charging my crystals, keeping my cup full so that I can be there as a full, complete person to fight for the liberation of Black people and to be a part of the movement. You know, it's really important, I think, to make sure that we fill ourselves up and do what we need to do to have a full cup, to be able to offer something.
I have chills. That wasn't basic at all. I have fucking chills. It sounds basic but it's because it's basic, it's what we forget.
Yeah.
We forget that we do need rest. And in order to be effective and impactful in this fight, we do have to charge our crystals and meditate and breathe and listen to Anita Baker and watch Cinderella with Brandy and do the things that really pour into us so that we can show up fully. There's this thing that Iyanla Vanzant said. She was talking about my cup runneth over. And she's basically was like, everything in the cup is for you. What runs over is for everybody else, which I think is so beautiful. It's like, you have to keep your cup full. If you're going to be effective, if you're going to make change, if we're gonna move through these terrifying waters to get to hopefully this, what I hope will be just a Narnia of just beauty and joy and inclusivity, and where representation isn't performative, and where, you know, everyone has a seat at the table and knows that they deserve that seat at the table and are willing to center themselves and all that. We have to keep our cups full. So yoga, meditation, all of it. I'm for it.
I love it. Thank you for saying I'm not basic.
Let the people know.
I'll take that with me.
Let the people know. Take that with you. Go charge your crystals and rub on the Beyonce photo and know that you are not basic. Well, Aisha like rosacea.
Brandon.
Brandon like, I don't know, abandon. I don't know.
We'll think of something.
We'll figure something out. Anyways, Aisha, thank you so much. This was incredible. And I love you. Can I say that?
Love you. Oh my gosh, I know it's soon, but I love you too.
There we go.
Also, just so you know, the Brandy Cinderella movie is not streaming anywhere, but it is on YouTube. Hot tip.
Life hack.
Just in case. I know everyone's trying to.
Absolutely. They're researching Josephine Baker and they're looking for Brandy. Absolutely. YouTube. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, honey. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.